Hello everyone. I've been a bit quiet lately because I was really ill last week, which wasn't great. It wasn't any virus, don't worry. It was just like a really bad headache and a bit of a fever, but I'm fine now. I thought it would be nice to continue my Qur'an reading series. I've only made 2 videos so far, but a lot of you guys seem to really enjoy them, and you've asked if I could do more, which is really nice. Thank you. And I wasn't sure which one I wanted to read next. I wasn't sure which one I should do. I'm quite interested in comparing the Qur'an with the Bible and maybe the Torah, but I don't know about the Torah. But I'm quite interested in comparing the Qur'an with the Bible, especially because I want to show that Islam and Christianity are actually quite similar, and it's all about the religious tourism I spoke about in my last Qur'an video, which I will link my other Qur'an videos at the end. Okay, so I wanted to read one that's relates to things specifically that are in the Bible, namely stuff that I know about in the Bible. So stuff like Jesus and stuff like that. And I asked you guys, and a lot of you suggested to read Surah Yusuf, which is like Joseph. So I was like, yeah, okay, sure. I'm going into this blind. I don't really know any context on this, but I'll probably read about that after. And as well, a lot of you suggested I should read The Cave. Apparently you read it every Friday or something, so maybe I can do that on a Friday or something. Okay, so there is one thing. I do not have my usual copy of the Qur'an with me. I think I must have forgotten to bring it to uni, so I'm sorry. Instead, I'm reading it online on this website, which I'll link below so you two can read what I'm reading, if you'd like. Okay, so scrolling down on this website, there's about 111 lines of this surah, and I'm just going to go straight ahead and then just read it and tell you my thoughts on it. Okay, so what I've managed to read and work out so far is that this story is extremely similar to the story in Genesis in the Bible, which is about Joseph and his coat of many colours. Okay, so what I've realised, I said I was going to read the context after, but I've read it alongside because just so I can explain it better, basically. So this is very similar to the story in Genesis in the Hebrew Bible, where you have Joseph and he's the favoured son of Jacob, and Jacob gives him a coat of many colours or many stripes, depending on how you translate it. And there's a musical made about it, although I haven't seen a musical. I'd like to. In the Bible, what happens is Joseph is the son of Jacob, and he's like Jacob's favourite son. Jacob gives him a coat of many colours, and his brothers are like really jealous, are like, why do you like this guy more? And then what happens in both, actually, what happens in the Qur'an as well, is they're all like, what should we do? Should we kill him? They're like, not sure. They eventually end up throwing him in a well. They do in the Bible as well. Yeah, essentially they end up throwing him in some sort of well, and then they bloody his coat, and then they show it to Jacob, and he's like, yikes. He's like, oh no. They actually do seem to be essentially the same story, but I'm just trying to spot if there's any differences or anything like that. Okay, so then what happens is Joseph is put in prison after a quick sort of altercation. Joseph is put in prison, and Joseph has the ability to interpret dreams, which is quite cool. I shouldn't say it like that. Joseph is put in prison, and he interprets his fellow prisoners' dreams, and they're like, whoa, that's like really cool, you can do that. And Joseph asks one of the prisoner who was going to be free to remember him to the king or the pharaoh. I believe essentially he does remember him to the pharaoh, and then Joseph or Yusuf is given a position of authority in the king's court. I don't know the proper words for these. So he is able to advise the Pharaoh on things by interpreting his dreams as prophetic dreams, which is why he's a prophet in Islam, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. One thing that I like is that like even the names are basically the same, but just slightly different, more I don't know the word, but they're slightly changed whether you're reading the Qur'an or the Bible. So like Joseph becomes Yusuf, Abraham becomes Ibrahim, Isaac becomes, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm assuming it's the same, Ishak. Please correct me on that because I'm really bad at these. And Jacob becomes Jacob. Yeah, I'm really bad with it. So thank you for this recommendation because it is so similar, and I actually love that it's like exactly the same. So I'm just coming to the end of the surah, and it says, I didn't know, but it calls the Torah here by name. It calls it the Torah, and the Gospel becomes the Injil, which is really interesting. I've never heard, I don't think in the translations I've read that they've referred to the books by name. I think when I was reading the cow in my first video, they just referred to Christians and Jews as people of the book, I think. So I've never heard them called by name, so that is quite cool down there. It says the Qur'an is not a forged statement but a confirmation of the Allah's existing books, the Torah, the Injil and other scriptures of Allah. I don't know what the other scriptures are, but perhaps it includes like the other parts of the Bible that aren't the Gospel. I'm not sure. What's also interesting that the Qur'an does that the Bible, I don't think the Bible does. It there seems to be a bit, at least in the few chapters I've read, at the start and the end, where it's saying to Muhammad, this is what happened, we're revealing this to you. The Qur'an is, it says here, the Qur'an is no less than a reminder and an advice unto men and jinn. So I find it really interesting, and I actually quite like that they're talking, that kind of, you can see that there's a small sort of dialogue between, is it God and Muhammad, where he is reciting the Qur'an to Muhammad, I think. So it's quite interesting that there's a dialogue at the end, because it gives you a bit more context behind it. It's not just this was divinely revealed. It is, you can see here that this is what Muhammad heard, this is what was said to him, and I think that's quite cool. I normally like to ask a question just to encourage some dialogue about it. I don't really have any questions about this one though. Okay, so I think I've got a question, and I think that would be, as a Muslim, who would you class as a disbeliever? Would you class, maybe this is more of a yes or no question though. Would you class, well, I don't know, just who would you class as a disbeliever? Let's keep it open. So yeah, there wasn't much reading of Surah Yusuf out loud as well on this one, just because it's more of a story and I can't really say direct quotes and discuss them because there's not much to discuss. I don't believe that makes sense. Like, it is said here, this is what happened, this is the story, at least that's how I interpret it. So yeah, but it's really good to read. I really like that, maybe it's just a translation, but even the way it's written is similar, and I just think that's really cool. Well, thank you for recommending it to me. I really enjoyed looking at the similarities, so that was a really good recommendation. And I'll probably read the cave next, or the spider, and yeah, we'll see. So yeah, so let me know if you've got any questions that perhaps I could answer for you, and I'll see you soon.